You have never lacked money. Not once in your entire life. What you have lacked is the consciousness of wealth. I know, as I say this, something in you wants to argue. You look at your bills, at the rent, at the numbers written in ink on that little book you call your account, and you say, Neville, you don't know my situation. I have lacked money many times, but I tell you, what you have lacked was never money. What you have lacked was the inner state from which money must flow. For there is no poverty in the kingdom of heaven, and the kingdom of heaven is within you. The world you see out there, the world of figures and facts and balances and debts, is nothing more than your own inner life pushed out. It is your imagination, solidified. It is your inner speech made visible. It is your feelings about yourself frozen into circumstance. What you call evidence is only old imagination. Look carefully at your life. The conditions that trouble you tonight did not appear in a moment. They grew, and they grew from seeds sown in feeling, in worry, in inner conversations you repeated so often, you no longer heard yourself saying them. Every time you lay awake and said, I do not know how I shall manage, you planted. Every time you looked at a bill and felt that sick heaviness in the stomach, you planted. Every time you told someone, money is so hard to come by, you planted. Tonight, I am not here to blame you for what has grown. I am here to show you that you can plant again. You are tired. I know that. I have seen that look in many faces. You are tired of working and finding that the harder you work, the tighter things seem. You are tired of repeating affirmations and hearing nothing answer you but the echo of your own voice. You are tired of hearing about abundance as a lovely word, while your own experience contradicts it at every turn. You have asked yourself, what am I doing wrong? Why does it work for others and not for me? Why does it feel as though life is against me when I am trying so hard to change it? My dear, you have not failed because you lacked effort. You have failed because you have been working in the wrong place. You have tried to move the shadows, not the light that casts them. You have polished the mirror, but refused to touch the face it reflects. You have fought with circumstances, not knowing that circumstances are children and the mother is your inner state. Tonight, if you will walk with me for a little while, you will learn to move in the one place where change is always possible and always effective, within. I am going to make you a promise, and I do not make it lightly. 30 seconds, rightly used, will do for you what years of toil could not accomplish. 30 seconds of imagination, placed at the right point, saturated with the right feeling, can bring into your world the money you need in ways you could never plan, never calculate, never control. I know these words sound extravagant. They sound too much, too simple, too easy. You are thinking of all the complicated systems you have heard about, all the advice to hustle more, to rise earlier, to push harder, to save here, invest there, calculate, compare, adjust, and I am saying to you, quietly and without raising my voice, 30 seconds, before sleep. For most of your life, you have trusted effort more than consciousness. You have believed that the sweat on your brow was worth more than the state of your mind. You have bowed before hours, before years, before age, before conditions. You have said, when I get this job, when I receive that promotion, when I am older, when I have more experience, when the economy improves, then things will change. Always, when, always one day, always out there. Tonight, I ask you to bring it all home. Bring the power back where it has always lived, in the simple, quiet fact that you are aware of being, that you can feel, that you can imagine, that you can choose, even for a single half-minute, to occupy a different state of consciousness than the one that has ruled you until now. You have looked at the world as something done to you. I am going to show you tonight that the world is something done by you, not by your hands, but by your assumptions. The house you live in, the work you do, the letters you receive, the men and women who seem to help or hinder you, these are not strangers. They are your own invisible beliefs, wearing clothes. They are your own inner speech, made flesh, and playing roles in your drama. If you truly grasp this, you will never again fear a circumstance. You may not like it, but you will know what to do with it. You will go within and change the only thing you ever needed to change, your concept of yourself. Money is not a substance out there that you must chase. Money is a shadow cast by a state of consciousness. It is one of the many ways in which life reflects your opinion of yourself, your estimate of your own worth, your habitual feeling of being. Change the light, and the shadow must change. Change the state, and the form must follow. There is no exception to this law. You may say to me, Neville, I have been trying to change my thoughts for years, and I will answer you, thought is not enough. It is feeling that moves the subconscious. It is feeling that imprints. It is feeling that creates. You may say, I have spoken many words of prosperity, and I will answer, words without feeling are dead. They are bodies without breath. The same sentence, spoken from two states, produces two entirely different worlds. Tonight we are going to prepare you, not merely to repeat a phrase, but to inhabit it, to clothe it with the one garment. The subconscious cannot resist the feeling of reality. Later, I shall give you a simple practice, so simple that you may be tempted to despise it, a small, sharp act of assumption that you will perform in the last moments before sleep. I call it a snap, for it is quick and decisive. But before you hear the method, your heart must be prepared. I could tell you the technique now, and you could write it down like a recipe. You could repeat it mechanically and then tell me a week from now that nothing has happened. That is why I will not give it to you as a formula. I will give it to you as a living thing, and to receive a living thing, you must be awake inside. So first, I must shake you a little. I must disturb the comfort of believing that your bank book is more real than your imagination. I must unsettle the habit of treating what you can touch as truth and what you can feel inwardly as fancy. I must turn you around until you begin to see that the outer is the dream and the inner is the cause. Ask yourself quietly, where did every condition in my life begin? Did it not begin as a thought, a fear, a suspicion, a belief, a feeling? Did I not first accept some idea of myself, small, limited, unworthy, at the mercy of others, and then watch as life arranged itself to confirm my faith in that small self? If you are honest, you will see the pattern. You have said, money always slips through my fingers, and life has agreed. You have said, it is so difficult to get ahead, and life has nodded and shown you why. You have said, people like me do not become wealthy, and life, being a faithful servant, has obeyed your decree. Tonight I am inviting you to issue a new decree, not with strain, not with clenched fists, not with loud words shouted into the night, but with the quiet authority of one who has discovered that he is the operant power in his world. You are not here by accident. You may believe you simply stumbled upon these words, or that a friend mentioned a lecture, or that curiosity brought you. But at a deeper level, it is your own desire for freedom that has led you here. You have called this knowledge to yourself. Somewhere in you, a decision has been made. I will live differently. I will no longer bow before facts as though they were gods. I will no longer sell my peace to the next bill that arrives. I will find the law and live by it. I speak to that part of you now. This evening, I shall show you a way to touch the roots of your reality in 30 seconds. I will show you where to place your mind just before sleep, so that the whole night works for you instead of against you. I will show you how to impress upon the deep mind a single feeling that will send money to you as naturally as water flows downhill. You have tried fighting with the river. Now I will teach you to stand where the current already moves. I want you, as you listen, to lay aside, for a little while, the habit of arguing with truth. You have argued for your limitations long enough. You have defended your lack, justified your struggle, explained to yourself and to others why things are as they are. And yet, all that explanation has not changed a single figure on the page. So for this hour, dare to suspend your disbelief. You need not swear to believe me forever. You need not join anything, sign anything, or promise me anything. You need only grant me this, that for a short while you will listen as if what I say might be true. If it is not, you have lost nothing but an evening. If it is, you will have found the key to a treasury that has always belonged to you. I speak not of a theory I have read, but of a law I have tested again and again in my own life and in the lives of hundreds who have come to me in every kind of distress. I have seen men and women with no visible hope receive sudden money from unexpected channels. I have seen doors open that had been barred for years. I have seen whole careers transformed, whole households lifted by a simple change in consciousness, maintained long enough to harden into fact. I will tell you their stories, not to entertain you, but to persuade you that this is no idle talk. The law is living, and it is impartial. It works for the just and the unjust, the wise and the foolish, the believer and the skeptic. The only question is, what do you impress upon it? Tonight, I propose to teach you a particular way of impressing a brief, sharp act of assumption, performed in the drowsy edge of sleep. Later, I shall give you the full method, but I want you to feel its meaning before you learn its steps. I shall show you that the distance between I am in need and I have more than enough is not measured in days or in dollars, but in a single movement of your inner sense of being. That movement can be made in half a minute. If you will walk with me to the end, you will leave not with a memory of pleasant words, but with a tool you can use tonight in your own bed, with your own mind, without the help of any man. This is my promise to you. 30 seconds before you sleep, used in the way I shall describe, can begin to attract money into your life with a speed that will astonish you. Not by magic, but by law. And this night, if you dare to believe me for just a moment, may be remembered as the night when you turned, quietly and without fanfare, from the consciousness of lack to the consciousness of wealth. Very well. Listen quietly now, and let these words sink beneath the surface of the mind. All that you behold with your senses, all that you touch, all that you call fact, all that you call reality, is not the cause of your life. It is only the result. The cause is unseen. The cause is invisible. The cause is consciousness, and consciousness is the only reality. You have been taught to believe that the world outside you is powerful, fixed, immovable, and that you are a small creature moving within it, trying to survive its pressures. I tell you that this is the great illusion under which humanity has labored for ages. The truth is the opposite. You are the immovable one, and the world is the moving image. You are the cause, and the world is the effect. Before there was any visible thing, there was awareness. Before there was any form, there was being. Before any man could point and say this is real, there was the quiet sense of I am. That sense has no shape, no color, no size, no limit. Yet from it all shapes are born. From it all colors emerge. From it all limitations take form. It is the womb of creation. It is the one substance out of which everything is made. When the ancient scripture says, "In the beginning was the Word," it does not speak of sounds spoken by a mouth. It speaks of states assumed by consciousness. The word is not a vibration in the air. It is the inner declaration of being. It is what you silently accept as true about yourself. That silent acceptance is the word made flesh, and the flesh is your world of facts. When you say inwardly, "I am poor," that is not merely an opinion. It is a word spoken in consciousness, and that word must become flesh as conditions that match it. When you say, "I am unlucky," when you say, "I am trapped," when you say, "I never have enough," these are not harmless thoughts. They are living seeds dropped into the soil of the subconscious, and they must grow into harvest. Now understand this deeply. Before you say, "I am rich," or "I am poor," before you say, "I am sick," or "I am well," before you add any description at all, there is first the naked awareness of being, the simple, unconditioned sense of I am. That I am is God. Not a God out there, but the very essence of your own existence. You may resist that statement. You may feel it is too bold, too sacred, too dangerous, but I can only tell you what experience has proven to me again and again. When the scriptures say, "Be still and know that I am God," they are not speaking to the ear. They are speaking to that silent center within you that knows it exists before any thought arises. This I am is infinite potential. It has no destiny of its own. It becomes whatever you clothe it with. It is like pure light before it passes through a prism. Once it passes through the prism of your assumptions, it breaks into form as the many colors of your life. You do not get what you want. You do not get what you hope for. You get what you assume that you are. This is the law behind the 30 seconds. It is not the length of time that matters. It is the movement of identity. When you shift who you are being, even for a moment, the entire universe must reorganize its behavior toward you. Now you begin to understand why years of effort can fail while a moment of faith can succeed. Effort often moves from the outside in. Faith always moves from the inside out. Effort tries to force a shadow to change its shape. Faith changes the light and lets the shadow obey. A man may labor for 20 years, trying to climb to a higher income, carrying within himself the feeling of being small, of being unworthy, of being dependent on others for his value, and all his labor will be filtered through that inner state. If success comes at all, it will come limited, fragile, temporary, because the inner assumption is weak. Another man may for a single moment feel himself to be the one who is secure, provided for, favored by life. And that assumption, once impressed with feeling, can shift the arrangements of the world faster than any strategy could. The difference is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is not background. It is not effort. It is state. You live in states, though you have called them circumstances. You walk from state to state as you might walk from room to room in a house, not knowing that you yourself built the house. One room feels like struggle. Another feels like rest. One feels like lack, another feels like abundance, and you move among them not by accident, but by inner agreement. Now I must make something perfectly clear to you, for this is where almost everyone stumbles. There is a world of difference between thinking about a desire and thinking from a desire fulfilled. When you think about what you want, you place it outside of yourself. You stand on this side of a gap, and you gaze across at what you long for. You feel separation. You feel distance. Even if you cover that thinking with pleasant words, beneath it lives the feeling of not yet, and the subconscious faithfully produces more, not yet. To think about money is to say, I do not have it. To think about abundance is often to confess that you are not abundant. The feeling beneath the thought betrays you, but to think from the desire fulfilled is entirely different. Then you do not look toward the thing. You look outward from it. You do not reach for it. You rest in it. You do not wait for it. You speak as one whose waiting is over. A poor man, thinking about wealth, talks like one pleading. A wealthy man, thinking from wealth, talks like one remembering. This is a difference of identity, not vocabulary. When you think from the fulfilled state, you are not trying to get, you are simply being. And the world has no choice but to confirm being. That is why a sentence spoken from the end is infinitely more powerful than 1,000 wishes spoken from the middle. You have been trained to think about what you want. You have been trained to analyze your lack. You have been trained to measure your distance from your goals. And all this training has kept you anchored in the very state you wish to escape. Tonight, I am retraining you to think from the end, not to fantasize, not to daydream, not to pretend, but to occupy inwardly the place you desire to stand outwardly. This is not self-deception. It is self-creation. What you call reality is only a delayed echo. The true act of creation happens in consciousness before it ever appears as form. The outward event is the final whisper of an inner decision you made long ago and forgot. Now consider this carefully. Everything you now accept as hard, fixed, inevitable was once only a thought, once only a feeling, once only an inner acceptance. Somewhere in your past, you decided, perhaps unconsciously, this is how life is, and life faithfully answered, yes. And you called it fate. But fate is only faith forgotten. If you can accept poverty as real, you can accept wealth as real. If you can accept delay as real, you can accept immediacy as real. If you can accept struggle as real, you can accept ease as real. The law does not choose among these. It only reflects the one you choose. Now I wish to draw your attention to something subtle but of immense importance. You do not move the law by effort. You move it by assumption. And assumption is not something you do with force. It is something you consent to inwardly. It is something you agree to be. A man does not strain to be tall. He simply is tall. A woman does not labor to be right-handed. She simply is right-handed. In the same way, the wealthy state is not a thing you push toward. It is a thing you accept as natural. The moment a state feels natural to you, it becomes inevitable in your world. This is why I speak of faith, not the faith of hoping and praying, the faith of knowing, the faith of inner rest, the faith of it is done, spoken not as a spell, but as a quiet recognition. And now we return to the mystery of the 30 seconds. Why 30 seconds? Why not 3 hours? Why not 3 days of meditation? Because the subconscious is not moved by duration. It is moved by intensity of feeling and by the absence of resistance. You can speak to a man for an hour and persuade him of nothing, or you can speak to him one sentence at the right moment and change the direction of his entire life. The moment before sleep is such a moment. At that edge where the day dissolves and night opens, the conscious guard relaxes. The arguments grow tired. The doubts soften. The rigid logic of the waking mind loosens its grip. And for a few precious seconds, consciousness stands naked before itself. In that moment, what you feel as true sinks straight into the deep creative power without being disputed. Most people pass through this gate unconsciously every night, carrying with them the same worries, the same fears, the same old stories of lack. And every night they impress those old stories again upon the subconscious. Then they wake and wonder why the same day repeats itself. Tonight, you will use that gate knowingly. Tonight, instead of falling into sleep with the burden of yesterday on your chest, you will carry into sleep the feeling of tomorrow already accomplished. And because the subconscious cannot distinguish between what you feel as real and what the senses later confirm, it will go to work immediately to make your feeling fact. I have said it many times in my lectures, and I say it again here: creation is finished. Everything you could ever desire already exists in the invisible. You are not bringing something into existence. You are selecting it. You are tuning in to a state already present and letting it express. Your life is like a great broadcast receiver. You receive not what you beg for, but what you are tuned to. Change the station inwardly, and the program must change outwardly. You may say to me, "But Neville, this sounds beautiful. It sounds true. Yet my experience tells me otherwise." And I answer, your experience tells you what you have been assuming, not what is possible. The law has been faithful to you, even in your suffering. It has given you exactly what you have consciously or unconsciously planted. Now you will plant deliberately. Before I tell you stories of men and women who prove this law in the realm of money, I want you to understand that the law itself makes no distinction between great and small. It will bring a penny as faithfully as it will bring a fortune. The same principle that brings a puppy to a child brings thousands to a woman and a position of power to a man. The difference is never in the law. The difference is always in the state assumed. Some desire timidly, some boldly, some accept reluctantly, some completely. And the law answers each according to the manner of their inner acceptance. I do not want you to be timid with your assumptions. I do not want you to take little sips of faith. I want you to drink deeply, if only for half a minute. You have wrestled with life long enough. You have reasoned. You have analyzed. You have struggled. Now I invite you to climb into the only place where struggle dissolves the end. To feel the end is to be free of effort. To rest in the end is to be free of effort. To rest in the end is to give the law something it cannot refuse. And in the chapters that follow, I will show you, through living examples, how ordinary men and women, burdened with debts, limited by age, hemmed in by circumstances, used nothing but this inner movement of identity and saw money come to them in ways reason would have called impossible. But before we enter their stories, I ask you one question, and I ask you to answer it silently within yourself. Are you willing, even for 30 seconds, to feel as though what you desire were already yours? Not to argue, not to test, not to half believe, but to feel it as real. If you are, then you are ready for what comes next, and if you are not, no technique in the world can help you. For the law obeys not your words, but your feeling of being. And now, with that understanding planted in you, we may proceed to the proofs that will quiet your doubts and awaken your faith. Very well. Listen now, not as one listening to stories, but as one witnessing law in action. Some years ago, a man came to see me in great distress. Outwardly, he appeared successful. He was a bank executive, well-dressed, respected, secure in the eyes of the world. Yet inside he was bound. His income had reached a ceiling. No matter how faithfully he worked, No matter how carefully he performed his duties, there was no further rise. He had asked for advancement. He had been told with polite finality that there was no position higher for him where he stood. The structure was rigid. The limits were fixed. If he wished to rise, he would have to go elsewhere. And even that seemed impossible. He had a wife. He had children. He carried the silent terror of a man who sees tomorrow pressing upon him while his hands are tied. He came to me skeptical, but desperate. And desperation, when it turns inward, is often the doorway to revelation. He said, "I have done everything right, Neville. I have worked honestly. I have prepared myself. Yet I am stuck." I told him gently, "You are not stuck in a bank. You are stuck in a state." That angered him at first. It always does. It is easier to attack the world than to question oneself. But he listened. I asked him one simple question. If you could choose freely, without consulting reason, without weighing probability, without asking how, what position would you desire above all others? Then he confessed that he had always dreamed of managing great funds for a large foundation or university, working with vast sums of money for long-term purpose. It had seemed to him a world forever closed. He had no contacts there, no invitation, no visible bridge. I answered him as I answer all who ask such questions. The bridge is not your concern. The end is. I instructed him in a simple practice. Each night, as he lay in his bed and felt the drowsiness stealing over him, he was to imagine that the day had already ended and that on this very day he had finalized his appointment to such a position. He was not to see interviews, letters, negotiations. He was not to reason how it happened. He was simply to feel the satisfaction, the relief, the quiet joy of knowing it was done. Just a short scene, just 30 seconds, then sleep. He did this not with enthusiasm, but with obedience. Night after night, through doubts, through discouraging days, he did not resign from his bank. He did not announce his desire. He changed no outward circumstance. He changed only the place from which he felt himself to be. Less than 2 months later, a director of one of the largest foundations in the country approached him unexpectedly. No introduction he could trace, no application he had made, no social maneuvering he had performed. The man told him that he had been observing his work quietly for some time, admired his integrity, and wished to offer him a position managing large endowment funds. The salary exceeded anything he had previously known. The responsibilities matched exactly the vision he had assumed. The past state dissolved. The new state stood revealed. When he wrote to me later, he did not say, "Neville, you were right." He said, "I now know that the law is real, and that knowledge, my dear friend, is worth more than any salary." Now let me tell you of a different kind of case, one where money was needed not for ambition, but for survival. A woman traveled from the East Coast to visit her daughter in San Francisco. She expected to find her child well and cheerful. Instead, she found her worn with anxiety. At last, the daughter confessed that she needed $3,000 immediately. There was no time to plan, no means to borrow, no visible solution. The mother could not produce such a sum at once. Her own funds were tied, and even if she could, the daughter, proud and independent, would never accept a loan. In her distress, the daughter said something remarkable. She said, "Mother, help me with imagination." The mother understood. She had attended my lectures. She had learned that imagination creates reality. They agreed to imagine together. Not a source, not a person, not a bank. They did not picture checks. They did not argue about channels. Instead, they imagined abundance itself. They felt money flowing in from north, south, east, and west. They felt joy. They felt relief. They felt gratitude, as though the problem were already solved. They did this for short moments at a time, each night, always feeling first, never reasoning. And then the mother returned home. Within days, her own elderly mother, 91 years of age, summoned her urgently. When she arrived, the old lady handed her a check for exactly $3,000 made out to the granddaughter in San Francisco. Not only that, she handed her more checks for the great-grandchildren. No one had told her of the problem. No one had asked her for help. She herself could not explain the impulse. She only knew she felt suddenly moved to give while she was still alive, to see the joy. This is how the law works. It does not move through your logic. It moves through impulses, through nudges, through inner urgings that feel natural to the one who carries them out. The channel never looks like magic to the person used by the law. It feels like their own idea. Now listen to this next case, for it reveals the secret of feeling even more clearly. A woman of 55 came to me at the end of her strength. She had no employment. Her car was barely running. She was behind on rent. She had no suitable clothes to seek work. Her bank balance was nearly nothing. She had listened to my lectures for a year, understood them intellectually, yet never dared to trust them fully. Now she had no choice but to trust, for there was nothing left to fall back upon. At first, she attempted to imagine every specific thing she needed: a job, a car, clothing, a secure home. But the list was long, and her anxiety was overwhelming. Each image collapsed beneath the weight of her fear. Then she remembered something I had said, that one feeling can imply all fulfillments. So she changed her method. Each night, as she drifted towards sleep, she whispered inwardly with deep feeling, "Isn't it wonderful?" She did not define what was wonderful. She did not define what was wonderful. She did not specify the form. She simply generated the feeling of having received marvelous news, gratitude without detail, joy without explanation, relief without knowing from where it came. She held that feeling for perhaps 30 seconds and then slept. She did this for 2 months. Outwardly, nothing changed at first. The obstacles remained. Yet inwardly, she began to wake with expectancy. She could not explain why, but she felt that something good was on its way. One day she met a man she had not seen in many months. They spoke casually. He mentioned he was traveling to New York. They parted. She thought nothing of it. A month later, that man appeared at her door with a certified check for $2,500. Shocked, she learned that in New York, he had encountered a mutual friend she had not seen in 25 years. This friend had become very wealthy. Hearing of her condition by chance, he felt moved to help her, not once, but monthly. And so for 2 years, she received generous income. Later, legal papers arrived establishing that the income would continue for the rest of her life. All from those words, whispered with feeling before sleep. Isn't it wonderful? Now let me tell you of one more proof, perhaps the purest of all, for it comes from a child. A grandmother once brought her 9-year-old grandson to one of my lectures. The boy sat quietly with a toy while I spoke. I explained that whatever state one assumes, one must experience. I spoke of a soldier who imagined himself at home and was honorably discharged. As we concluded and rose to leave, the boy looked up at me and said with shining eyes, "I know what I want, and now I know how to get it." His grandmother protested at once. "You can't apply this teaching," she said. "You want a puppy, and your parents will never allow it, especially your father. He hates dogs. It is impossible." But the boy smiled and said, "Every night I am going to pretend that I already have one, and that we go for walks together." 6 weeks later, the grandmother wrote to me in astonishment. The father had come home one evening with a puppy in his arms. A business associate's dog had given birth. Something had moved him, an impulse he could not explain. And before he knew what he was doing, he had chosen one and brought it home. The father was surprised by his own action. The mother was stunned. The boy was not surprised at all. He had assumed, he had felt, he had been faithful to the state, and the world obeyed. Now draw the conclusion that reason alone will not allow you to draw, but that your heart already knows. These are not accidents. These are not lucky breaks. These are not coincidences strung together by chance. This is law. The same power that moved a foundation director, an elderly grandmother, a distant wealthy friend, and a reluctant father stands at work in your life this very moment. It does not evaluate your background. It does not measure your education. It does not ask for your connections. It answers only one thing: the state you assume to be true of yourself. These people did not force results. They did not strain, they did not calculate, they entered a state inwardly and rested in it. And the world reshaped itself to match their rest. This is why I say to you with absolute certainty, it is not luck, it is not coincidence, it is law. And because it is law, it can be used consistently, reliably, by you. If these stories stir something in you, that stirring is not mere emotion, it is recognition. You are remembering something you once knew but have forgotten. that you were never meant to beg life for its gifts. You were meant to assume them. And now that the law stands proved before you in living examples, your doubt has less ground to stand upon. As we go forward, I will teach you not only that this law is true, but exactly how to place yourself under its operation in the simplest, shortest, most effortless way possible, 30 seconds before sleep. For the same power that brought these things to others will now be directed consciously by you, and it cannot fail. Yes, now we come to the heart of it. Now we come to the place where most fail, and where those few who succeed uncover the true secret that changes everything. Words do not create. Pictures do not create. Techniques do not create. Feeling creates. You may repeat a sentence 1,000 times with lips and tongue, and nothing will move. You may build the most elaborate image in the mind, sharp as a photograph, and still the world remains unchanged. But let a single feeling take root in the depth of your being, and the whole structure of your life must rearrange itself to reflect it. This is why I say to you plainly, consciousness shaped by feeling is the only creative power. When men come to me and say they have tried to visualize and it did not work, I do not ask them what they saw. I ask them what they felt. And most of the time what they felt was longing. What they felt was lack. What they felt was effort. What they felt was hope, tinged with fear. And all of those feelings belong to the state of not having. You cannot plant the feeling of not having and reap the harvest of having. That would violate the very law of creation itself. There is a vast and subtle difference between desiring and receiving. Desire always contains tension. It leans forward. It reaches. It confesses absence. Receiving is weightless. It settles. It rests. It confesses completion. When you desire money, you feel the ache of needing it. You feel the pressure of time. You feel the insecurity of waiting. That feeling, no matter what words dress it, tells the subconscious, continue the condition of lack. But when you receive money, you feel relief. You feel calm. You feel release. You feel safety. You feel a quiet satisfaction, almost ordinary in its peace. That is the feeling that creates. Hope does not create. Relief creates. Hope stretches you toward tomorrow. Relief anchors you in now, and creation only happens in now. You may say to me, Neville, how can I feel relief when nothing has changed yet? And I answer you, how can you feel sorrow over a scene in a play when nothing real has happened to you at all? Yet your body weeps, your heart tightens, your breath shortens. Why? Because feeling does not require physical facts. Feeling only requires acceptance. The body is obedient to imagination. It always has been. It does not wait for logic. It does not consult reason. It responds to what is felt as true. When you remember something painful from your past, your body reacts again, as if the event were happening now. Your pulse changes. Your stomach tightens. Your breath shifts. The past is gone, yet the feeling recreates the effect in the present moment. If memory can do this so easily, why should imagination not do the same? The reason you have not used it consciously is because you were never taught that your feeling was creative. You were taught that you were reacting to life, not authoring it. Now I will show you how to move into the feeling of receiving even when your senses still display lack. One of the most effortless bridges into feeling is memory. Not memory for the sake of reliving the past, but memory as a reservoir of emotional states. You have all felt relief before. Even if your life has been hard, you have felt relief at some time. You have felt gratitude. You have felt joy. You have felt satisfaction. You have felt the quiet release that comes when a burden is lifted. Perhaps it was after an illness had passed. Perhaps after a payment had been made. Perhaps after a frightening moment resolved safely. Perhaps after you received unexpected good news. The event does not matter. The feeling does. Call that feeling back now. Not the image. The feeling itself. The softening in the chest. The loosening in the breath. The warming behind the eyes, the sense that life is safe again. That is the emotional substance of receiving. Once you touch that feeling, you may gently redirect it. You may say inwardly, this is the feeling I would have if my money situation were resolved. And you allow the feeling to remain while your reason remains silent. Reason will protest at first. It always does. It will whisper, but nothing has changed. And you will answer, not with argument, but with feeling. Feeling is always superior to words. Feeling is always believed by the subconscious. There is another way to awaken feeling, and that is through gentle scene construction. Not elaborate dramas, not long visual stories, only simple implications. You need not see a full bank vault. You need not count stacks of currency that often create strain. Instead, imagine the moment after resolution, always after. Imagine opening a statement and feeling calm instead of tension. Do not strain to see numbers. Just feel the emotional response you would have if the numbers pleased you. The slight smile, the quiet nod, the easing of the shoulders. Imagine placing a pile of paid bills into a drawer, not with desperation, with indifference, with the indifference of one to whom such payment is ordinary and unremarkable. That feeling of ordinariness is a powerful signal of acceptance. Imagine hearing your own voice on the telephone saying to someone you trust, "Yes, everything is taken care of now," and feel the ease in the voice, not excitement, ease. You do not need strong emotion. Strong emotion often belongs to wanting. Creation flows most purely from naturalness. Now I want to guide you gently into the nature of relief itself. For relief is the doorway through which wealth enters consciousness. Close your eyes for a moment, even as you listen to my words, and imagine the sense of relief that follows good news. The moment after the shock has passed, the moment when you exhale and say, "It's all right now." That exhalation is a creative act. In that exhalation, the struggle ceases. And where struggle ceases, the law moves freely. The subconscious does not respond to force. It responds to surrender. Hope strains, relief surrenders. When you stop trying to get, you have silently assumed that it is already given. That is faith in its truest form. This is why I so often tell you not to visualize with effort. Effort reinforces the state of not having. You effort only for what you believe you do not yet possess. A wealthy man does not effort to be wealthy. He simply lives as one to whom wealth is normal. Now I will speak to you very personally. If you have struggled with money, if you have worried about it, feared it, analyzed it, resented it, competed for it, you have not been fighting money. You have been fighting your own feeling of insecurity. Money never withholds itself. Consciousness either allows or blocks the flow. And blocking does not occur through scarcity of opportunity. It occurs through the habit of inattention. When you relax inwardly, life accelerates outwardly. Now let us speak of one of the deepest mistakes people make in this work. They attempt to feel excitement instead of feeling relief. Excitement is unstable. It rises and falls. It depends on what might happen. It is the emotion of anticipation, and anticipation still points forward. Relief is stable. It comes only after completion. It is the emotion of having arrived. If your inner practice leaves you stimulated, restless, wired, checking for signs, you are likely still wanting. If your inner practice leaves you calm, neutral, steady, grounded, you have likely received. Now I will walk you softly through 3 emotional doorways that anyone can use, even without visual imagination. First, the doorway of the bank account. Do not picture numbers. Do not struggle with details. Instead, imagine the act of closing a statement with satisfaction, the small internal nod. The feeling of "that is fine." Let your shoulders relax. Let your breath slow. That is all. That feeling alone is the seed. Second, the doorway of paid obligations. Feel the emotional difference between a bill that troubles you and a bill that is simply handled. The handling has no drama. It is quiet. It is ordinary. Taste that ordinariness. That is wealth's signature. Third, the doorway of the relieving phone call. Imagine someone asking you gently how things are now, and hear yourself answer, slowly and with ease, "Everything is settled now." Feel what your chest does as those words leave your lips. That opening is the creative moment. You may move through any of these doorways in your nightly practice. You may change them from night to night. What matters is never the scene. It is always the feeling. Now hear this clearly and let it sink deep into you. The subconscious does not understand words. It understands state. You can lie and say, "I am rich," while feeling desperate inside, and the subconscious will faithfully reproduce desperation. You can say nothing at all and simply feel the stillness of security, and the subconscious will reproduce security. This is why so many affirmations fail. They begin with tension and are repeated from longing. They are spoken by the identity that lacks, and so they propagate lack. I do not wish you to affirm. I wish you to assume. Assumption is silent. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It simply is. A man who assumes himself loved does not repeat, I am loved. He behaves as one who does not question it. A woman who assumes herself safe does not chant protection. She simply moves as one who knows she is guarded. In the same way, one who assumes wealth does not plead with the universe. He rests. And now you understand why 30 seconds can change everything. Because in 30 seconds, identity can shift, not through force, but through surrender into a new feeling of being. You are not trying to get money in 30 seconds. You are becoming the one for whom money is natural. And when you become that inwardly, money must follow outwardly, not as a reward, but as an echo. Now listen to me closely. If from this day forward you feel relief more often than you feel tension, your financial world cannot remain the same. If from this day forward you practice touching the emotion of having instead of rehearsing the emotion of needing, your circumstances must transform, not because of hope, but because of law. And in the next movement of our time together, I will take you directly into the precise moment, the doorway of sleep, where this feeling can be planted with the least resistance and the greatest power. For feeling, when married to the state akin to sleep, becomes destiny. Now we move into the holy ground of this work. Now we move into the silent chamber, where creation actually takes place, not in noise, not in strain, not in effort, but in stillness, in surrender. In that narrow doorway between waking and sleep, you live your life moving between two levels of mind, whether you know it or not. The surface mind that reasons, judges, calculates, fears, hopes, doubts, and the deeper mind that creates, sustains and expresses. The first argues, the second obeys. The first is changeable, the second is faithful. The first asks, is this possible? The second asks only, what is being felt as true? The conscious mind is like the captain who gives orders. The subconscious mind is like the engine that moves the ship. The captain may shout all day, but if the engine is not engaged, the ship does not move. And yet, when the engine turns, the captain cannot stop its force. The subconscious is the womb of your world. Every circumstance you now live in is something that was once carried there silently as a feeling, an assumption, a self-concept. There is no exception, not one. Poverty is born there. Wealth is born there. Health is born there. Sickness is born there. Love is born there. Loneliness is born there. And the conscious mind alone cannot imprint this womb with authority. It may suggest, it may argue, it may repeat words, but the subconscious accepts only what is impressed with feeling. Now here is the great mystery that few ever learn. There is a moment each day when the door to this creative womb swings wide open without struggle. That moment is the state just before sleep. It is the soft borderland between worlds. The conscious guard grows drowsy, its tight grip loosens, the sharp edges of reasoning dissolve, and the deeper self rises to the surface, like still water. In this state, you are neither fully awake nor fully asleep. You are suspended. You are floating. You are suggestible. You are receptive. You are undefended. This is why children are so easily impressed. They live close to this zone. This is why hypnosis works. It mimics this zone. This is why prayer, when done correctly, has always ended in sleep. Because sleep is not rest. Sleep is creation. The scriptures were not using poetry when they said, and God rested on the seventh day. They were describing the state in which the creative act is sealed. Work is done in imagination. Rest is the moment of impression. The subconscious does not argue. It does not compare. It does not analyze. It does not ask if something is realistic. It does not ask if you deserve it. It asks only one question. Is this being felt as true? If yes, it accepts the image. If no, it discards it. During the day, your conscious mind rejects most suggestions. You hear conflicting ideas. You meet resistance. You confront opposing facts. The senses shout their evidence. And so impressions are weak, scattered, unstable. But as you descend into the drowsy state, resistance collapses. the outer world recedes. The inner world grows vivid. The subconscious stands unguarded, and whatever you drop into it at that moment is received whole. This is why a single imaginal act before sleep may outweigh an entire day of worry. This is why one assumption at night may correct 1,000 doubts in daylight. You see, the subconscious rules your automatic reactions. It governs what you expect without effort. It governs your emotional reflexes. It governs what feels natural to you, and what feels natural to you, you reproduce. A poor man does not feel poor because he lacks money. He lacks money because he feels poor. A wealthy man does not feel wealthy because he possesses money. He possesses money because wealth feels normal to him. The conscious mind may desire change, but the subconscious preserves identity. Until identity changes, circumstances cannot change permanently. Now let me speak to you about this strange, beautiful threshold called the hypnagogic state. It is the drifting world, the melting world, the place where the body sleeps, but the imagination still moves. You know this state well, even if you have never named it. It is the moment when time blurs, when you catch yourself slipping, when thoughts become loose and dreamlike, when your body feels heavy and distant, when effort fades. In this state, you may feel yourself growing lighter or heavier. You may feel as though your arms are floating or sinking. You may feel warmth or coolness moving through you. You may feel as though the room disappears and only awareness remains. This is not weakness, this is power. For here, the subconscious opens itself like fertile soil. During the day, you impress your world with scattered seeds. At night, you plant deliberately. And here is the most important truth of all. The subconscious does not care what happens during the day nearly as much as it cares what you fall asleep feeling. For what you carry into sleep, you carry into being. If you fall asleep feeling anxious, you deepen the pattern of anxiety. If you fall asleep feeling deprived, you deepen the pattern of lack. If you fall asleep feeling secure, you deepen the pattern of safety. If you fall asleep feeling fulfilled, you deepen the pattern of abundance. Sleep is not an escape from life. Sleep is the architect of life. Now you can understand why men pray themselves into sleep in every ancient tradition. Not because sleep is weakness, but because sleep is imprinting. What you think upon in the morning is suggestion. What you feel upon while falling asleep is command. That is the difference. The conscious mind proposes. The subconscious disposes. Now I will speak very plainly. You cannot force the subconscious. You cannot threaten it. You cannot argue with it. You cannot persuade it through logic. You can only feel your way into it. And that feeling must be simple, natural, unstrained. The subconscious does not respond to emotional violence. It responds to emotional acceptance. That is why effort kills the seed. That is why trying too hard blocks manifestation. You do not dig a seed into the earth with a hammer. You lay it into soft soil. The state akin to sleep is that soft soil. As you relax into that state, the boundary between imagined and physical dissolves. The subconscious does not say, this is only imagination. It says, this is experience, and it takes its impression from experience, not from logic. Now you may see why I say to you with certainty, the man who controls his state at the moment of sleep controls his destiny. It is not what you fight during the day that shapes you. It is what you accept at night. If the conscious mind is the editor, the subconscious is the printer. Whatever reaches the press will be published in your world. Now I will prepare you gently for what is to come next. The method you will learn does not work through repetition. It works through assumption. It does not work through strain. It works through surrender. It does not work through volume. It works through depth. You will not ask. You will not beg. You will not plead. You will declare through feeling. And the subconscious, faithful as the womb of creation, will accept your declaration as law. Now let me tell you what the subconscious does once it receives your assumption. It begins to rearrange your world without your knowledge. It alters how people feel toward you. It alters what opportunities cross your path. It alters what ideas rise within you. It alters what impulses guide your steps. It alters what doors open and what doors close. It does not announce its work. It moves silently. It brings about what you have felt as true through chains of events, so natural that you may never trace them back to the imaginal act. You will say, it just happened. You will say, it was luck. You will say, it was coincidence. But you will be wrong. It was obedience. The world obeyed your inner state. And now you can see why there is no need for struggle. You were never meant to fight the world into giving you what you want. You were meant to allow the world to serve what you have already accepted within. This is why those who discover this law often grow quiet. They stop chasing. They stop begging. They stop forcing. They begin to rest. And from that rest, power flows. Now I will say something that may shock you. Most of what you call manifestation is actually resistance disguised as effort. True creation feels almost passive. It feels like yielding. It feels like consent. It feels like, yes, I accept this as true now. That is the entire act. And once accepted, it must appear. Not because of faith, not because of worthiness, but because this is how consciousness expresses itself. It must be what it is conscious of being. Now you are ready to understand the method that compresses all of this truth into one brief, potent act. You are ready to understand how 30 seconds on the border of sleep can redirect a life. You are ready to understand why speed comes not from force, but from accuracy. And in the next movement of our time together, I will unfold the structure of that act, not as theory, but as practice, so that tonight, as you lay your head upon the pillow, you will step across the threshold, not as a beggar, but as the one who assumes. And what one assumes in the silence of sleep, the world is compelled to echo in the noise of day. Now I will give you the method itself, not as an abstract idea, not as a beautiful theory, but as a living act you can perform tonight. This is not a ritual you repeat mechanically. It is a movement of consciousness. It is a conscious descent into the womb of creation with a clear intention and a surrendered heart. First, you must understand that nothing begins until the body is quiet. The body is the gateway. If the body is tense, the mind remains defensive. If the body is relaxed, the mind becomes receptive. So the first movement is always physical surrender. When you are ready to sleep, lie down in the position most natural to you. Let the room be still. Let the light be soft. Let the noise of the day fade. Close your eyes gently, not with force. And now begin to withdraw awareness from the outer world. Do not rush this. Creation is not hurried. Let your breath slow. Let each exhale carry tension out of you. Feel the bed supporting you. Feel the weight of your body settling downward, as if the earth itself were drawing you into rest. Now bring your attention to your feet. Feel them soften. If you notice tightness, do not fight it. Simply become aware of it, and it will dissolve. Let the calves soften. Let the knees soften. Let the thighs grow heavy and warm. Let the abdomen relax completely. Release your stomach as though nothing needs to be held in anymore. Now let the chest loosen. Let the shoulders drop away from the ears. Let the arms rest as though they belong to someone else entirely. Let the hands open. Let the fingers be still. Now relax the neck, the jaw, the tongue, the lips. Let the forehead smooth. Let the muscles around the eyes melt. Let the space behind the eyes open like a dark, quiet room. Now your body is no longer an instrument of effort. It is an instrument of surrender. This is the doorway. Now gently invite drowsiness. Not by forcing sleep, but by welcoming it. Whisper inwardly, slowly, I am drifting, I am drifting, I am so sleepy. Do not rush the words. Let them slide downward like leaves floating on water. At this stage, you may notice your thoughts becoming slower, more fluid, less defined. This is exactly what we want. The rigid frame of waking logic is dissolving. The threshold is approaching. Now here is the first movement of the technique. You enter the subconscious, not through struggle, but through softness. You do not push your way into the deeper mind. You sink into it. If you find yourself thinking about the room again, or about the body again, return gently to the feeling of heaviness. Return to the sense of floating just above sleep. This floating state is the frontier between the two worlds. Now, in this softened state, you shift from effort into presence. And now the second movement begins. You do not think about the future. You do not think about tomorrow. You do not think about how anything will happen. You shift into now. This is the most powerful turn of all. Most people destroy their own creations by postponing them inwardly. They say, it will come. They say, it is on its way. They say, I am waiting. And by saying this, they lock their desire into the future, which means they keep it absent. The subconscious creates only what is felt as present. So now, in this drowsy stillness, you gently ask yourself not, how will this happen, but how would I feel if it were already done? You do not imagine receiving. You imagine having already received. There is no ceremony here. There is no anticipation. There is no excitement of arrival. There is simply the quiet emotion of completion. Now perhaps for the first time you understand why hope is weaker than satisfaction. Hope waits. Satisfaction rests. Hope reaches outward. Satisfaction sits inward. Hope looks ahead. Satisfaction looks around and says, it is finished. Now feel into that. Do not search for dramatic feeling. Creation is not dramatic. Creation is natural. Ask yourself gently, if this problem were solved right now, if the money were already mine, what would change inside me? Do not imagine the money first. Imagine the relief. Feel the loosening in the chest. Feel the release in the stomach. Feel the breath deepen. Feel the nervous system soften. Feel the subtle sense of safety return to your being. This feeling is not fantasy. This feeling is instruction. Now you enter the third movement. You assume. You do not affirm. You do not chant. You do not try to convince. You simply shift identity. Before this moment, you may have felt like someone who lacks. Now you perform the simplest and boldest act in the universe. You become the one who has, not in words, in being. Assumption is not pretending. Pretending wears a costume, while the old self remains behind the mask. Assumption removes the mask altogether. You do not pretend to be rich. You become the one whose nature is wealth. You do not pretend to be safe. You become the one whose nature is security. You do not pretend to be provided for. You become the one for whom provision is natural. How do you know when you have assumed correctly? You stop straining. You stop reaching. You stop trying. There is a subtle click inward, a quiet settling. A sense of this is mine now. Not with fireworks, with silence. Assumption feels like recognition. Now you linger there, just long enough for the feeling to be undeniable. Not long enough for logic to return. Not long enough for doubt to argue. Not long enough for effort to intrude. Just long enough for the subconscious to accept the identity you have chosen. And now the final movement begins. You release. You do not cling to the feeling. You do not rehearse it. You do not test it. You let it go exactly as you would let a seed fall into the earth. Once the seed leaves your fingers, it is no longer your business. You do not dig it up to inspect it. You do not water it every few minutes. You do not worry whether the soil is good enough. You trust the soil. You trust the law. You sink into sleep. And sleep becomes the seal. Now you may understand why this act is so brief. Because the subconscious does not require repetition for persuasion. It requires only one moment of genuine acceptance. A single moment of true assumption outweighs years of conflicted desire. 30 seconds of real identity change is more powerful than decades of wishing. Now I will speak to the errors that most make, so that you may avoid them. The first is forcing. When you force feeling, you remain outside of feeling. When you say, I must feel this now, you activate tension. Tension belongs to lack. The more you try to feel, the more you prove that you do not. Feeling comes through allowance, not command. You do not command satisfaction. You allow it to arrive by relaxing into the state where it would naturally exist. The second error is waiting for signs. The man who waits for signs has already disbelieved. When you plant a seed in the earth, you do not wait at the surface, demanding a sprout the next hour. You go on with your life. Waiting anxiously disturbs the soil. Expectation is not calm faith. Expectation is hope in disguise. Calm faith is rest. The third error is thinking about the how. The conscious mind cannot build the bridge to your desire. It can only observe the river. When you think about the how, you step back into effort. When you think about the how, you re-enter limitation. The subconscious sees paths that the conscious mind cannot even imagine. You do not ask the seed how it will grow. You do not instruct the rain when to fall. You do not supervise the roots as they form. You trust the process. And here is why 30 seconds is enough. Because identity is not measured in time. Identity is measured in intensity. A moment of true assumption restructures the whole pattern. The subconscious does not accumulate belief like a ledger. It responds to conviction, and conviction is not long. It is deep. It is singular. It is decisive. A man who steps off a cliff does not desire falling. He does not rehearse falling. He falls because the assumption becomes fact, instantly. In the same way, the moment you truly assume the state of having, the subconscious accepts the fall into abundance, and gravity does the rest. Now you may still wonder, is it really so simple? Yes, and that is exactly why the world has missed it. The mind always suspects the simple. It mistrusts the quiet. It rejects the natural. It hunts for effort, because effort feels earned. But the law has never cared what feels earned. The law responds to what feels assumed. Now tonight, when you perform this act, do not judge it. Do not analyze it. Do not rate it. Do not compare it. Tonight's act is not a test. It is an initiation. You are not trying to prove the law. You are consenting to it. And once you consent, it will not leave you. From that night forward, you will never again believe that reality is something that happens to you. You will know it is something that unfolds from you. And now, before we move onward, I want you to feel something very gently. If this could work, if this were true, if tonight could initiate a change beyond your old imagination, would it not already feel lighter in you now? That lightness you feel is not hope. It is resonance. Your deeper mind recognizes its own power, and what recognizes its power is already changing. Now that you understand how to plant a new seed, you must also understand how to remove the old ones. For no garden flourishes if weeds are left to choke the soil. The past does not die by time alone. The past lives as long as it is emotionally remembered, and every time you relive a painful memory with feeling, you breathe life into it again. This is why I teach the art of revision. Revision is not denial. It is not pretending that something did not happen. It is the recognition that memory itself is creative. The past is not fixed. It is fluid in consciousness. And whatever you consistently remember with emotion continues to shape your present. Every disappointment you have experienced with money, every humiliation, every unpaid bill, every rejection, every long night of worry, none of these are finished until you finish them inwardly. You may believe they are behind you, but if they still stir emotion in you, they are not behind you. They are active. They are shadows, still casting form upon your life. Revision is the act of rewriting the emotional record. When you revise, you do not change the facts of history. You change the feeling that sustains the facts in the present. Let me speak plainly. If you continue to feel like the person who lost, you will continue to lose. If you continue to feel like the person who failed, you will continue to fail. If you continue to feel like the person who was rejected, you will continue to be rejected. Not because the world is cruel, but because consciousness is faithful. Now let me show you how to revise. Choose one memory related to money that still carries emotional weight. Do not choose your entire history. Choose a single scene, one moment, one conversation, one letter, one bill, one humiliation, one fear-filled night. Now see it again, but do not relive it as it was. Change it at the end. If you receive bad news, hear good news instead. If the balance was empty, sleep, let it be full. If someone spoke words of rejection, let them now speak words of approval. If you were evicted, let the door now be opened in welcome. Do not watch this scene as though it belongs to a stranger. Be inside it. Feel it as happening to you now. Let the relief be real. Let the release be real. Let the new ending replace the old. You do not need length. You need feeling. You repeat the revised scene until the emotional charge of the old memory dissolves, and the new feeling feels more natural than the old wound. When the relief feels genuine, the revision is complete. And something very important happens when this is done. Your nervous system changes. Your inner reflex changes. Your automatic expectations shift. And what you expect without effort, you express without effort. The subconscious does not know which event is real in time. It only knows what is felt as real now. And what is felt as real now is what it uses to shape tomorrow. This is why revision changes the present. Now let us speak of the mental diet, for the nightly act alone is not enough. if you poison the soil all day long. Your inner conversations are silent prayers. They are not harmless. They are not idle. They are not passing. They are seeds. Every time you say inwardly, I will never get ahead, you plant. Every time you say inwardly, money is always hard for me, you plant. Every time you say inwardly, something always goes wrong, you plant. Every time you rehearse worry, you plant. Every time you imagine failure, you plant. And the subconscious accepts every word as truth spoken by God, for you are the God of your inner world. Now this is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to free you. For if words bind, words also loose. If speech imprisons, speech also liberates. The same mouth that curses can bless. The same imagination that wounds can heal. Now you must become conscious of your inner dialogue, not with tension, not with obsessive control, but with gentle awareness. Listen to yourself as you move through the day. Notice the tone of your inner speech. Notice how you talk about money. Notice how you talk about your future. Notice how you talk about yourself. Do not judge it when you hear it. Observe it. And when you catch a thought that contradicts your new assumption, simply replace it. Not with strain, with authority. If the thought says, this won't work, let the response rise quietly. It is already done. If the thought says, I am behind, let the response rise, I am carried forward. If the thought says, I cannot afford this, let the response rise, everything I need is provided. And speak these inner words, not as a beggar, pleading for comfort, but as a sovereign declaring fact. At first it will feel unnatural, that is expected. The old identity has weight. The old voice has momentum. The old pattern resists displacement. But persistence reshapes what is natural. You did not learn to speak your current inner voice in a day. You learned it through repetition. You will unlearn it through the same law. The mind is not changed by argument. It is changed by replacement. Now let me bring you to a deeper mystery. Everyone around you is responding to your inner assumptions. This is not poetry. This is law. Every person you meet is your imagination in another costume. They behave according to the role you assign them inwardly. If you assume people are obstacles, they will become obstacles. If you assume people are opportunities, they will become opportunities. If you assume the world withholds, it will withhold. If you assume the world provides, it will provide. You may not consciously think these things. That is not required. It is not your conscious opinions that govern. It is your deep feeling of what is normal. A man who feels wealth as natural will find money moving toward him through people who believe they are acting of their own free will. The clerk will choose him. The employer will favor him. The client will select him. The opportunity will rest before him. They will say afterward, I just felt called. They will say, I don't know why I chose you. They will say something told me to, but it was not chance. It was not fate. It was assumption. Now apply this to money. If you assume that money must be fought for, people will resist you. If you assume that money flows naturally, people will cooperate. If you assume that clients are difficult, they will be difficult. If you assume that opportunities favor you, opportunities will favor you. You do not change others by speaking to them. You change others by changing the state from which you see them. Now I must warn you gently of one hidden danger. The danger is not failure. The danger is self-sabotage. This happens when a man plants a seed at night and uproots it during the day through emotional contradiction. He imagines abundance and wakes in fear. He assumes wealth and then discusses lack for hours. He feels fulfilled at midnight and feels desperate by noon. This does not nullify the seed instantly, but it weakens it. The subconscious receives mixed impressions and produces mixed results. This is not punishment, it is fidelity. Now how do you prevent this? You do not suppress fear. You do not struggle against doubt. You do not punish yourself for negative thoughts. You simply return again and again to the end. Each time you notice the old pattern, you do not argue with it. You gently shift back into assumption. Let the inner sentence always be the same in essence. It is already done, but I have planted the seed. The harvest is certain. Now let this be said simply. The daytime is the testing ground. The nighttime is the planting ground. If the day shakes you, the night recenters you. If the day wounds you, the night restores you. If the day confuses you, the night reorders you. You do not need to achieve perfection during the day. You need only to return faithfully at night. Now there is one more thing. Do not try to revise everything at once. The mind grows tired. Choose one scene each night. If revision is needed, change it fully. Then when the emotional sting is gone, move to another on another night. Over time, your emotional history will be replaced. And when your emotional history changes, your future changes automatically. You do not need to chase your destiny. You simply need to change the ground from which you walk. Now I will tell you something very quiet and very powerful. When a man succeeds with this law, it does not make him arrogant. It makes him gentle. For he realizes he has been fighting shadows. He realizes the enemy was never outside. He realizes the barrier was never in people or systems or fate. It was always in assumption. And once he sees that, he forgives easily. He blesses quietly. He expects naturally. He stops measuring. He stops comparing. He becomes still inside. And from that stillness, his world rearranges itself. Now, before we proceed, let me ask you to notice something within yourself. If you feel lighter than when we began this part, it is because burdens dissolve when they are no longer believed. If you feel quieter, it is because struggle fades when cause is known. If you feel hopeful, it is because hope is the first shadow of assumption. And now the remaining acts will carry you deeper still, into the place where doubt dissolves entirely and the identity of wealth becomes your natural home. Now I will speak to you about the moment that causes most men to turn back, not because the law has failed them, but because they misread the silence between planting and harvest. This silence is the testing ground. This is where faith is purified. This is where identity solidifies. And this is where many abandon the very power they have just awakened. Doubts will come. I say this to you not as a warning, but as a certainty. Doubts will come because the old state does not release its hold easily. You have lived under its governance for years, perhaps for a lifetime. It has woven itself into your habits, your reflexes, your expectations, your nervous system. It has built a world around you that appears solid. And when you introduce a new assumption, the old state reacts as though it were being threatened, because it is. Doubt is not a sign of failure. Doubt is a sign of displacement. It is the echo of an identity that is losing its authority. When doubt rises, do not argue with it. Do not try to crush it. Do not attempt to overpower it. For resistance only feeds what it seeks to destroy. Instead, let doubt pass like a sound in a distant room. You need not answer every noise. You need only remain seated in the state you have chosen. When the voice says, "What if this doesn't work?" the correct response is not debate. The correct response is quiet assumption. You return to the inner posture of one who has already received. You do not say, "It will work." You say inwardly, "It is done." The first is hope. The second is identity. Now there will be times when delay unsettles you. You will count days. You will measure outcomes. You will notice dates passing. The mind will whisper, "Too much time has gone by." And again, you must understand, time is not a measure of progress. Feeling is the only measure. The seed beneath the soil does not look for daylight to prove its existence. It grows in darkness. If it demanded light before growth, nothing would ever live. The very invisibility of the process is what allows it to work. The subconscious operates in secrecy. Its movements are unseen, but its results are inescapable. You must not confuse speed with visibility. Many assume that if manifestation were real, they would feel something happening outside immediately. But creation does not shout. It rearranges quietly. People move without knowing why. Letters travel without announcement. Opportunities shift without trumpet. Conditions soften without warning. And suddenly, what seemed absent appears as though it had been forming all along, because it had. Now I will speak of a thing that confuses many and causes some to stumble. Sometimes, after you plant a new assumption, the outer world may seem to worsen rather than improve. Bills may increase. Delays may appear. Resistance may intensify. And the mind will cry, "See, it is failing." But this is not failure. This is transition. The old state does not dissolve without disturbance. The old pattern does not surrender without resistance. The final appearance of the old condition often grows louder just before it collapses, like a dying flame that flares once more before it fades into darkness. These are what I call the last tremors of the old state. They are not signs that the new assumption is false. They are signs that the old assumption is being dislodged. If you misinterpret these tremors, you may retreat back into the old state and breathe new life into it. But if you remain unmoved, if you persist without tension, if you rest in the end without demanding proof, these tremors pass, and with them, the old world. Now let me tell you the true meaning of persistence. Persistence is not repeating words endlessly. Persistence is not straining to maintain feeling without interruption. Persistence is not battling doubt as though it were an enemy to be slain. Persistence is quiet loyalty to a chosen identity. It is returning again and again to the end without drama. It is falling asleep night after night in the same fulfilled state without impatience. It is rising during the day and correcting your inner speech gently without self-attack. It is remaining seated in calm assumption while the world rearranges itself around you. Persistence is not loud. Persistence is not aggressive. Persistence is faithful. Most men believe persistence means effort. They believe it means clinging. They believe it means struggling. But true persistence is rest that refuses to be shaken by appearances. Now I will answer the question many do not dare to ask aloud. What if this law fails me? It cannot fail, not because of my authority, not because of belief, but because it is not a practice. It is a principle. You do not ask whether gravity will fail before you step off a cliff. You know it cannot, because it is not a matter of opinion. It is law. In the same way, consciousness cannot fail to express itself. It must objectify what it assumes as true. It has no alternative. It has no choice. If your desire has not appeared, it is not because the law failed. It is because the assumption was not sustained in identity. Either it was replaced by fear, or it was diluted by contradiction, or it remained wish instead of being. This is not condemnation. This is clarification. The law never fails. But men often abandon it too early. They dig up the seed to inspect it. They grow anxious in the silence. They measure when they should rest. They demand proof when they should trust. And by this, they interrupt the process they had already set in motion. Now listen to me very carefully. You do not manifest by willpower. You manifest by identity. Willpower exhausts. Identity persists. When you truly become the one who has, effort collapses naturally. You no longer force belief. You no longer try to imagine. You no longer strain to feel. You rest. And from that rest, the world reorganizes. Now let me tell you the single greatest mistake men make during delay. They return to the old conversation. They talk about their problem as though it were still sovereign. They describe their lack as though it were still law. They rehearse their fear as though it were still true. And by doing this, they reactivate the very state they sought to leave. You must understand this. Talking about a thing with emotion keeps it alive. You do not need to deny your circumstances. You need to stop enthroning them. A king reigns only so long as he is recognized as king. Withdraw recognition, and his reign ends. Now when doubt visits, here is what you do. You do not bargain with it. You do not insult it. You do not analyze it. You simply return to your end. You do not say, I hope this will happen. You say inwardly, it has happened. You do not say, I am trying. You say inwardly, I am. The nervous system learns from repetition. The subconscious absorbs from consistency. And over time, what once felt imagined begins to feel remembered. That is the sign that assumption has become natural. Now I tell you something of great comfort. Even when you waver, the seed does not die. Even when you doubt, the law does not withdraw. Even when you grow impatient, the subconscious does not abandon its work. The only true danger is complete renunciation of the end. As long as you return again, you remain under the law of fulfillment. You need not be perfect. You need only be loyal. Now I will share with you a truth that will shield you from despair. The subconscious does not move in straight lines. It moves in spirals. The outer world may seem to circle before it resolves. Events may drift before they converge. Conditions may wobble before they stabilize. And during this movement, you must not lose your seat, The man who stands in the middle of a bridge and doubts its completion never crosses. The man who walks without stopping reaches the other side. Now I want you to hear this with the deepest part of your being. The law is not impressed by urgency. The law is impressed by certainty. The man who demands quickly reveals fear. The man who rests reveals authority. When you truly assume your financial end, the timeline ceases to be your concern. You feel done before it is seen. And because you feel done, it must be seen. This is why I say the law never fails. Men fail the law only when they surrender identity for evidence. But the law cannot fail itself. And now let me leave you with one final protection. When you notice impatience, bless it. When you notice doubt, bless it. When you notice fear, bless it. Do not curse them. Do not resist them. Bless them and return to assumption. For resistance binds, but blessing releases. And as you bless, the old state loosens its grip. Now the final gate approaches. Soon we will step into the place where the wealthy identity becomes your permanent dwelling, where you no longer practice abundance, you live as it. And from that state, effort ends and expression begins. Now we arrive at the hush at the end of the day, the sacred pause between what was and what shall be. And in this pause, I speak to you not as a teacher of technique, not as a lecturer of law, but as one consciousness speaking to another, reminding it of what it truly is. You have walked a long inner road in these hours together, not in distance, but in depth. You have not acquired something new. You have remembered something eternal. And that remembrance is the true awakening. You came here believing that you were searching for money, but you were never searching for money. You were searching for release. You were searching for safety. You were searching for rest. You were searching for the end of fear. You were searching for permission to be at peace. And what you have discovered is that peace was never in money at all. It was always in identity. You do not search for abundance. You awaken as abundance. You do not chase provision. You recognize provision as your natural state. You do not pursue wealth. You remember wealth as your original garment. You were not made to beg life for its bread. You were made to command the earth with your assumption. Now let that settle into you. Not as poetry, as truth. The hunger you felt was never hunger for paper or numbers. It was hunger for power. The power to rest without anxiety. The power to move without fear, the power to breathe without tightening, the power to plan without dread, the power to give without depletion. And that power has always been seated within your awareness. You have not been waiting for permission from the world. The world has been waiting for your permission. Tonight, you give it. Tonight, you withdraw the old consent of lack. Tonight, you withdraw the old agreement with struggle. Tonight you withdraw the old loyalty to limitation. And in its place, you assume one simple truth. You are not becoming wealthy. You are recognizing yourself as wealth. Now I will guide you gently one final time toward the place where this recognition becomes sealed. Do not listen as one who seeks instruction. Listen as one who is being led home. As night approaches, or as your body grows heavy, wherever you are, allow yourself to soften again. There is nothing to perform. There is nothing to impress. There is nothing to prove. There is only one small act of inward consent. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath slow. Let your hands become quiet. Let the effort of the day fall away from your chest. You are not carrying the world into sleep. You are leaving it at the doorway. And now, as the outer fades, the inner becomes vivid. This is your sanctuary. This is the chamber where all futures are born. Now hear this with tenderness and authority. You do not need to see anything. You do not need to imagine any grand scene. You do not need to manufacture emotion. You only need to accept one simple state. How would you feel right now if the matter that has troubled you were already settled? Not on the way. Not improving, not slowly resolving, but finished, done, completed. How would your breath change? How would your chest feel? How would your jaw soften? How would your nervous system respond? Do not search. Let it answer you. Let the relief arrive naturally. That relief is not lying to you. That relief is your signal that the identity has shifted. And now, without strain, without repetition, without drama, let one knowing pass through you. It may not form in words. It may not need language. It may simply appear as a certainty, a quiet acceptance, a silent yes. And in that yes, the creative act is complete. You are not impressing a distant force. You are impressing your own infinite depth, and that depth has never failed to obey. Now as you drift, I speak over you, not as suggestion, but as blessing. May you sleep tonight in the consciousness of having. May your body receive rest without calculation. May your breath deepen without effort. May your mind loosen its grip on tomorrow. May your heart remember that provision is not a future event. It is a present condition. May every cell of your being learn once again the feeling of safety. Not because you control the world, but because you arise within it as the source of certainty. And as you rest, let one truth wrap around you like a garment. You do not seek money. You awaken as wealth. You do not run toward abundance. You rest as abundance. You do not plead for provision. You remember provision as your inheritance. This remembering is not emotional. It is sovereign. Now I tell you something that may sound mystical, but is exact. When you fall asleep holding an assumption, you are not merely resting. You are instructing creation. You are baptizing tomorrow with tonight's identity. You are telling the earth how to behave in your presence, and the earth, being faithful, will comply. The world you wake to tomorrow may look unchanged at first glance, but it will not be the same world, because the one who wakes is not the same one who lay down, and the world always bends to the one who assumes. Now I do not ask you to believe blindly. I ask you only to be loyal to what you have assumed. Do not rush to measure. Do not hurry to test. Do not exhaust yourself with watching. Let the seed work. Let the soil remain undisturbed. Let the law express at the pace of natural enforcement. For enforcement is certain, not because of your effort, but because of your identity. Now my voice will soon fall silent, but the silence is not empty. It is active. It is fertile. It is creative. And as you sink into it, remember this: you have not learned a method. You have remembered who you are. Methods end. Identity remains. Techniques fade. States endure. And from this night forward, whether you return to these words often or not, something has already shifted. You have crossed an invisible threshold. You have stepped out of the old agreement with delay. You have assumed the posture of one who has. And once assumed, it cannot be entirely forgotten. It may be neglected, it may be doubted, it may be resisted, but it cannot be unknown again. Now I leave you with the final pronouncement, not as hope, not as encouragement, not as wish, but as law. It shall be done unto you as you have assumed, not as you have begged, not as you have waited, not as you have feared, but as you have assumed. Sleep now in that authority, and let the world tomorrow awaken to the shape of your imaginal consent. For the word has been spoken in consciousness, and the word shall not return void.